Hi, welcome to the Inevitable You podcast. I'm your host, Brian Hemmer, with my co-host and fellow coach, Inevitable You certified coach, Dan Jimenez. And today I wanted to focus on, because it's a theme that I've noticed recently just from multiple places, but most recent one was in a yoga class last night. The quote that the teacher used was an Oprah Winfrey quote, and it was, let me make sure I get this correct. When there is no struggle, there is no strength. And I heard another one. It was a recent Joe Rogan podcast, actually. Have you listened to the one with Duncan Trussell at all?
Oh no, I haven't, but I love Duncan Trussell.
Yeah,
So
dude, they're all great, but they were talking about something around, people that grow up in really um, just they grow up in rich families, or they have a lot given to them. They don't go through a lot of struggle early on, and how they can miss out on valuable life experiences. And Joe goes into his background, growing up poor and seeing his parents struggle and having to go through that, at an early age, builds this resiliency, gives you this kind of awareness of other people if they're trying to take advantage of you, or how to navigate through obstacles and adversity and things like that. And then the third one, because I always like when things come in three, is Nikola Jokic from the Nuggets, who just won the championship. In the post-game interview, they're asking him about just kind of the journey from, they went from like the worst team in the league to winning the championship in like 7 or 8 years. And he was talking about, first you have to start off, you have to suck, basically. Like, you're a rookie in the league, you're new. This is a totally different game, right? So you suck at first, and then you get better, you get good, and then you have to lose. You have to go through that experience, and then you can, get better again. And then you eventually get to, the top of the game. Not everyone, but that's kind of the typical, what he was describing as the path to, greatness, essentially, is that you have to have these setbacks. And so just wanted to talk about the role of struggle and adversity and pain and defeat in success and happiness and all the great things in life. Because well, one, my question is, do you think it's necessary? Do you think it's a mandatory kind of thing in life? You have to have struggle to experience success and happiness?
now this is a really deep question.
Yeah.
I don't think um, I could answer it in a quick, 30-minute podcast. Uh, I have grappled with this for a bit, and ultimately where I stand today is I do not believe it's necessary to go through that to achieve. Whether that's achieve on like a Newtonian earthly plane of like business success, or on in like an enlightenment, spiritual path of like, oh, you need to go through struggle to become like spiritually enlightened. So I don't believe it's necessary. However, in the same breath, I'm going to say I do believe that most humans on this earth aren't at a level that they've progressed past that teaching method. And I
Hmm.
think that it's such a story and a mythos that's so pervasive, right? Like, story is the most powerful thing on the planet, right? Like the most powerful force. So story controls, it's everything we talk about, right? What are your beliefs? What are your ideas? What are your thoughts, right? They're stories, and story, you see it whether it's in books and magazines and stuff like that, or it's just in the way we talk, right? Like, oh, gotta work hard to make a living, right? Like, you know,
Right.
gotta believe to achieve, gotta,
No pain, no gain.
exactly, right? And it's these things affect us at such a deep level that I don't if we can get to a point where the story of humans, or even in the Western Hemisphere or wherever, changes to a point where like that's not a thing, yes, our bodies will still experience pain, right? Like we have sensories, but we're going to experience it in a different way. It's not
Mhm.
going to be horrific. It's not going to be, oh my God, this is awful. This is, a terrible thing. So long story short, yes,
Long-winded answer for yes and no.
yes and no, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and I too have struggled with this one for a while. Because like on one hand, there's part of me that's like defiant. It's like, no, I don't have to go through pain. I don't have to struggle. I don't want struggle. I don't want to have to experience that. And it's almost like an old aversion to pain program that I I don't like. I don't want to believe it. On the other hand, I know it's true, and it's kind of a law of like almost the yin yang nature of the universe. Like you can't have happiness or all the great stuff without all of the dark bad stuff, or having gone through trauma, or some kind of pain. And so I do agree that maybe there are some enlightened beings, maybe like, but even Jesus, if we want to use him as a classic example, well, he went through 40 days of wandering through the desert, probably starving and, you know, dying of thirst, right? Like he had to go through that, probably even internal struggle, right? To reach that state that he finally found God, or he realized that I'm the Messiah, I'm the one. Like, so I do think it is a mandatory thing, at least on this plane of existence, that, and we have classic examples of like you go to the gym, like the only way to get stronger is you have to tear muscle fibers, right? You have to go through, you have to lift heavy weight, you have to break your body down so it grows back better, right?
Maybe. So here's
Yeah, yeah.
here's where I'll interject. Everything that was intertwined with those examples was story about the thing,
Mm,
right? Wandering around the desert for 40 days. Dude, I, for my birthday, signed up for a 2-week hunter gatherer experience in the Utah desert where I'm going to be wandering the desert looking for food for 14 days
yeah.
because that sounds fun to me, right? Like
Mm,
it's the perception of it.
I see.
Going to the gym and tearing muscles, like this is awesome. I love the feeling of my muscles growing, of those fibers splitting to make room for more, fibers to come and fill in its place.
Right, right.
It's like one example that is really just it's been on my mind for the last few weeks. Have you ever been to a backyard barbecue and there's like a bunch of flies
Uh-huh.
and the flies keep landing on you?
Uh-huh.
You're just like swatting them away and you're just like, it's like I have to leave. Like I sometimes I'll go out to my car, I'll have to like go take a walk, like it's just so intense for me. There's no actual physical pain, it's an emotional pain. And now there's all these people who live in like sub-Saharan Africa that you see on National Geographic. Flies are like crawling in their mouth and inside their ear, and it's just a normal day. They don't
Yeah.
even realize they're there. There's no swatting them away. So like when I
They're
think
not experiencing the same emotional turmoil and pain as you as you. Yeah.
exactly, and so like that that probably highlights where I'm coming from
Yeah.
best in terms of it is the story you put on the thing you're going through.
Right.
Do do I think that heightened trauma, let's say, or heightened stress can add to greater transformation? Sure. Like I don't think it's necessary, but you know, go back to the survival courses. So I
Yeah.
took a survival course like 10 years ago, and they have what's called the impact phase. And they basically put you out in the middle of the desert, and it's nighttime and you have no headlamps, and they don't teach you how to make shelters or anything, but they just leave you and they're like, hey, we'll see you in the morning. And you freeze your ass off all night. And it
Mm.
is like no one sleeps. And then you end up walking like an unknown distance the next day, which is about 20 or 30 miles. They told us after the fact. And it's really difficult. But I remember, because of the intensity of the suffering that I did go through that first night, like, I know shelter is the number one priority, other than positive mental attitude. Um, uh, Shelter's the number one priority. And it's like, because that was such an intense experience for me, would it have been as an intense if I was just like, oh yeah, it's cold, but I like the cold, and cold therapy is good for your body, and
Yeah,
people
yeah.
signed up for this? Like, probably not. And so this is the
Right.
part that I don't know. This is the part that I'd be like, yeah, this is interesting. Like, I do think maybe suffering has, its place.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically what I mean, if I could summarize what you're saying is yes, it is part of the planet that we live on, a part of the human experience. But what really matters is the perception and how we're talking about it, how we perceive it. Like, and I think that's a really important point because you could go through a very painful experience and the dialogue or the perception of it could be, this is the worst thing. Why is this happening to me? This is, the end of the world. This is, this is the worst thing ever. I'm never going to recover from this. Or and I think what I'm hearing you say is you can still acknowledge it as that moment of struggle, but just by acknowledging that through this process, I'm gaining something or I'm gaining strength out of this. I'm learning something. I'm building callus. I'm becoming more resilient. I'm even perhaps enjoying this. Like maybe it's a David Goggins, even though he's, I
For
think,
sure.
not human, right? Where he goes through intense levels of pain, I think, that most people can't endure, but he loves that, man. He like lives for that. He seeks that out. And so he wouldn't necessarily describe it as a painful experience,
Sure.
but it's something that he loves doing. It's the story he's telling about the experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you summed it up. I mean, it's one of those things, like, we get to choose, right? We get to choose how we experience life. We get to choose how we're going through this stuff. You know, all of this to say that it doesn't mean you can go through life without things coming into your uh, experience that you don't desire, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So there's going to be that contrast. There's going to be things like, you can be the most enlightened person in the world, and you're still going to have stuff that you're like, I'd rather that not be happening right now.
Right, right,
So, yeah, to that point, I don't think that is avoidable, undesirable things coming into your experience.
right. What is important is having the awareness or the consciousness of how you're responding to it, right? Like, and this is the part where, I think it's a challenge for everyone. I know I experience it. Like when you're in those moments, it sucks. Like there's times when it's just like you're having a really human experience and you're like, I don't want to be here anymore. This sucks. But you can take a step back, or even just acknowledging that in going through this, I will come out of the other side. There is something I'm learning. There is something I'm gaining, and that could at least make it not as painful in the moment, right?
Sure. Yeah, and this isn't to say that, like, oh, I have this understanding and now I've never gotten to the place where I'm like, fuck all the things that I've learned. Like, I get to that place where I'm just like, God, I know I should be thinking positively right now, but it's hard to do that. It's like,
Yeah.
I know I could look, I know, like, Brian, has any hardship you've ever been through, did you die from it?
I think I'm still here.
right? It's like you can look at like, man, 100% of the tough scenarios I've been through, I've lived through, right? And I'm stronger for it, right?
Yeah.
Like typically, yeah, there's the one-offs like, oh yeah, except that I have this, nagging ankle injury now. Like, but
Yeah.
in some way you got stronger. The whole broken leg limper tool, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that based on that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, for new listeners, it's a classic tool we use. If you break your leg skiing, and they rush you down to the emergency room, your bones popping out of the thigh, tree bark, mud, ice everywhere. And the nurses are screaming. Doctor walks in and he says, "Good news, I can fix this. Bad news, you're going to limp for the, 90% of the patients that have this kind of injury limp afterwards." And so you can create the reality, and because of the power of labels, or listening to authority figures and subscribing to a story, that can become reality, versus parallel universe, same leg break, rushing to the emergency, doctor comes in, he says, "Good news, I'm a badass, I can fix this." Even better news, now it's going to require rehab. You have to push through, you have to work hard at this. You have to do what they tell you. When you do the proper rehab, you 90% end up walking fine. And so that's a very real phenomenon, because we know that broken bones typically heal back stronger than they were. The body repairs itself better than it was, because it says, "Oh, that wasn't strong enough before. We have to overbuild." But
Same principle as muscle tissue, right?
yeah,
You push yourself, oh, it wasn't strong enough to finish that last rep. Like, okay, next time, here's some more muscle tissue so that you can, do that amount of work and then a little bit more.
yeah. And it's like, why do some athletes come back in 6 months after ACL tears? Like Adrian Peterson came back, I think it was 6 months, but he came back the next season and broke the NFL rushing record. Versus some, it's career enders. And obviously there's some physical things to consider, but
Sure.
if your mindset, and he talks about this, you can look at interviews, he's like, "I attacked my rehab. I wasn't going to let it destroy me and end my career. I got after it, man." And he had his sights set on the goal, man. He wanted to be the best running back in the NFL. Versus some, it's like, "This is terrible. I've worked so hard. I've lost everything. This is going to take me 2 years. It's a different story."
And
And that
that,
you could maybe look at the comparison of the two doctors. Maybe Adrian Peterson's doctor said, "Yeah, man, you attacked your rehab, you're going to break the NFL record next year." Maybe the other doctors were, "Ooh, it's going to be a long road, and you're not going to be the same afterwards." And
on my second deployment in the military, I was over in Iraq. I tore my Achilles tendon,
mm,
complete tear, like not just partial. It popped. I heard the pop over my earbuds,
ah,
rolled up into the back of my calf. Like it was pretty serious. The orthopedic surgeon that had just got there a few days earlier to our post was like, "Oh, you're lucky I'm here,"
yeah,
which there's so many synchronicities and amazing things that happened out of this. But he's like, I love doing these things. I love my job. Uh, I am more of like a sports orthopedic surgeon, and I really believe in aggressive recovery. And
mm-hmm,
he's like, "We'll fix it. You're not gonna be able to damage the repair that I do on it. And I want you, as soon as you can put weight on it." He's like, "Take one day off, and then as soon as you can put weight on it, just start putting weight on it.
yeah,
Move it, start moving it." He's like, "Wear the boot to hobble around with your crutches and stuff, but like that's just in case you like have a fall down some stairs or something like that."
yeah,
Uh, but he's like, "Move it as soon as you can." And I did. I spent one day completely bedridden, the next day like half and half, and then by day 3 I was back in the gym doing all upper body stuff and that type of thing, single legged stuff. But by the time I got to physical therapy, right, it was like 3 weeks later, 2 weeks later, I forget when physical therapy started. I was already back to the full range of motion that they wanted me to get to after physical therapy.
Wow. Yeah.
And to this day, I mean, I ran a 5K 2 months later, and
Wow.
um, to this day, I have better range of motion in that ankle than I do in the other ankle. And it's
Interesting.
like, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. But everyone I talked to, when they saw me with it, oh man, my uncle had it, never, it was never the same, never the same. Someone else, he's like, oh, look, here's my scar. He's like, I've had a limp ever since. Like every person I talked to, other than this doctor that I was working with, and my own arrogance of like, I'm healthy and fit, like I'm young, like this is an old person's injury, like I should be able to, I'll recover the shit out of it. Like,
Yeah.
and it did. And
Yeah.
so it really, I truly believe it is the story you put around it.
Yeah.
Every
That's an
conversation.
awesome, that's an awesome example. And to go back real quick to the broken leg limper tool, again, the really important point is the rehab that goes into it and believing a different story about it. And so, okay, so you can get this with a broken leg or a broken body part, but is the same true for a broken mind or a broken thought, a broken heart, a broken soul, right? Like, no, I mean, it's the same rules apply. And so, what does rehab look like for the mind or the soul? Well, it's okay, you went through a terrible experience. You have to go back and reprocess. What did I learn? What did I get from this? What were the strengths? How did this make me a better human being? Some classic examples, a failed relationship. Um, I know how to love better. It wasn't the relationship wasn't supposed to be anyway. And now I'm, off to find my true partner, or, losing a job. Maybe I didn't do the best job as an employee. Maybe that wasn't the right job for me. Maybe there's things I can do better in my next go around, or maybe my boss was an asshole and I didn't, didn't like him anyway. And I mean, countless examples, right? But like going back to reprocess and find again what were the things you got out of the experience as part of rehabbing the mind, rehabbing the soul. So I just wanted to make that important point of that tool there.
Yeah, dude, that's huge. That just reminded me of just listened to a TED talk the other day. I think it was like Kate McGonigal. It was about make stress your friend.
Hmm.
And basically, she's a clinician or mental health therapist. I don't remember her exact title, but she's like, man, for the last 10 years, I've been telling all my clients that stress is bad for you. And that, like, stress is, you're going to have heart disease, you can create all these things. And she's like, all these new studies are coming out that actually say, no, 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 believing stress is bad for you is bad for you. And
Yeah.
like, basically what happened is they took a bunch of people, they asked them, over the last year, how much stress have you had in your life, right? Low, medium, high, let's just say. And then they tracked them for the next like 10 years, right? And they looked at the death records over the next 10 years, and they, extrapolated all out that people who had high stress and believed that stress was bad for you, you had a 40% more, like, higher chance of death.
Oh, wow.
People who had high stress in their life but either were ambivalent to it, or like were like, no, I don't think stress is bad for you, like whatever, same exact mortality or vitality rate as the people who had low stress.
Interesting.
So the only difference was the belief around, is stress bad for you?
Yeah.
It's kind
The
of what
story around stress. Yeah.
way around stress, right? So it just kind of, more
Another good example.
data
Yeah.
pointing towards, like it doesn't even have to be physical, or I mean, I guess that's physical, but not physical in the sense of like muscle tissue and bone and that type of thing, but
Yeah,
more emotional stress, right?
right. Yeah, I mean, there's countless examples of that, pressure builds diamonds, or, one I
Totally.
like to use is like in sailing, races aren't won in the tailwind because everyone's going the same speed. They're just going as fast as the wind is blowing. It's made in the headwind. So how you can properly cut your sail and how you can manage and use the adversity and the struggle to win the race, or I mean, that's how it happens.
It's awesome.
So in summary, is struggle necessary? Yes, but doesn't have to be called struggle. Maybe it can be called character building moments, or
Challenge is a word I like.
yeah. So again, I just thought that was it got me thinking when I heard that quote, when there's no struggle, there's no strength. And I'm like, okay, but I really don't want struggle, but maybe that's not such a good manifestation. Maybe I should say valuable life challenge and experiences builds good strength.
I like it, man.
Cool. Any last thoughts?
No, love these conversations. Love getting deep and, being able to share the fact that, I don't have necessarily one codified view on things. I love being able to have my perspective shifted. So thanks.
No, thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. If you have questions from this episode, type them in comments or DM us. If you're going through a challenge or struggle right now, something we can absolutely help with. If you want to go through that process of rehabbing the mind or rehabbing the heart, that's something we specialize in. So again, appreciate you for listening or watching, and stay tuned for more.